So we are here today for an info session about the Rural Welcoming Initiative for 2026. And I really appreciate you all for taking the time to join us today. I know that these days we all have a lot on our minds for ourselves and for our communities and the people that we serve. So I thank you for taking the time out to be here in the midst of everything else that you have going on. Welcoming America's mission and our big idea really includes helping communities to develop and strengthen a welcoming infrastructure that can weather different circumstances and challenges. And RWI, the Rural Welcoming Initiative, does play a role in the development of that welcoming infrastructure. And so, during a time when I think that a lot of people are asking themselves, what can we be doing? How can we be impactful and supportive of our communities? Developing and strengthening a welcoming infrastructure in your community is something that you can do. And so I'm glad that you're here and that you're considering it. And so before we jump in, I want to share just a couple of quick housekeeping items. As you saw when you first came in, we are in a Zoom meeting format rather than a webinar format. So we can see each other or at least see our names on the screens. And we did that on purpose because we wanted folks to be able to, if you'd like, to ask questions aloud during the Q&A time later. But prior to that, we will ask folks if you could just please remain muted. That way everyone can hear the information that's being presented. But you can feel free to put questions into the chat at any point. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, you can also raise your hand or unmute and ask those questions aloud, whichever you'd prefer. And as a reminder, we are recording the call today, and so all registrants for this webinar will receive a copy of the recording in a follow-up email that we send in the next couple of days. And so if you know of others who weren't able to attend or weren't able to get registered for this call, you can feel free to forward that to them or let them know that they can email, and we'll be happy to send a copy of the recording to them. And so in case you're wondering who to email or who I am, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Brianna Broberg, and I'm a Senior Regional Manager at Welcoming America. And I am fortunate enough to be the person who leads Welcoming America's rural programming, including the Rural Welcoming Initiative. And so I'm excited to share some information about that program with all of you today and to answer any questions that you might have. So we'll start out with a little bit of background about the Rural Welcoming Initiative, or RWI, as we call it. We'll talk about the details of eligibility, the application process, what you can expect as a participant in the program, and then we'll open things up for any questions. So again, feel free to put those questions into the chat at any point. You can send them to the full group, or you can directly message them to me. And then when we get to the Q&A portion, I'll look back through those questions in the chat if there are any, or again, you'll be able to raise your hand or unmute and ask your question aloud. So today's call, I expect, will be fairly brief. So hopefully you're able to stay until the end, but if you do need to hop off early, as I said, we'll share that recording with you, and you're always welcome to reach out via email. My email address is listed here on the slides, just brianna@welcomingamerica.org. And so you can ask any other questions maybe that you didn't have the chance to ask today. And so with that, we'll go ahead and really get started. As I mentioned, I lead Welcoming America's rural programming. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the organization, Welcoming America is a national nonprofit, nonpartisan organization leading a movement of inclusive communities becoming more prosperous by ensuring that everyone belongs and can thrive. We believe that all people, including immigrants, are valued contributors and are vital to our community's success and shared future. Welcoming America is a membership-based organization, and our members are local governmental entities at the town, city, and county levels, as well as local nonprofit organizations from all across the country. Our members are located in communities of all kinds of demographic makeups, and the member localities and organizations themselves take on all different kinds of forms, including schools, libraries, governmental offices, like, for instance, neighborhood development or workforce and economics. We have a number of community-based organizations, some that are immigrant-serving nonprofits, others that have a wider focus. We have public health organizations and chambers of commerce and economic development commissions and community foundations and more. So while the Rural Welcoming Initiative, the RWI program, is specifically for rural communities and regions, the broader Welcoming America network is open to local governments and local nonprofit organizations from communities of all sizes. Since you're here, you are likely aware that the Rural Welcoming Initiative, RWI, is a program for which interested local governmental entities and local nonprofit organizations can apply to receive coaching, peer learning opportunities, and other supports to help you set and implement goals around increased welcoming, belonging, and immigrant inclusion in your rural communities and regions. And so over the next few minutes, I will dive more specifically into the benefits and commitments that are part of RWI. But before we do that, I want to back up and just make sure that we're all on the same page. So what do we mean when we say rural? It means different things to different people. So for instance, I'm originally from a town in central Minnesota that has a population of a little more than 20,000 people. So growing up, I knew that I didn't live in the big city, but I don't think that if you asked most people who live where I'm from, if they consider us to be part of a rural community, that they would necessarily say yes. But in fact, my hometown is a hub community for a very rural region. The towns around us have populations from less than 100 people up to a couple thousand. The surrounding counties are very much made up of agricultural land, so there's a lot of wide open space and distance between people and places. So Welcoming America would consider my hometown a rural community, even though, as I always say, we have the Walmart in our town, so we feel like the big city, but we are rural. And so in the past, RWI has had participants who are from very small nonprofits and from local governments that are communities made up of maybe 1,000 people, a couple thousand people. But we've also had economic development commissions and community foundations that serve large but broadly rural regions. And we've had participants from hub communities like mine, which are somewhat more populous than their neighboring communities, but they're still very much rural in character. So to clarify, for our purposes, Welcoming America defines rural very broadly as being a community with a population of 50,000 people or fewer, or a region with overall low population density, a place that isn't considered a suburb of a major metropolitan area, but really most importantly, if you as a resident of your community or serving a region, if you would consider it rural, then we will consider your application, and you can make clear to us through your application in what ways you feel that your community fits that concept of rural. So there are several objectives to RWI. But to uplift just a couple of them here, I wrote that we provide support in demonstrating measurable progress in building public and multi-sector infrastructure for immigrant equity, which is a lot of words and is not really that clear. So really what I mean by that is that we will help you to begin or to dive more deeply into assessing your community's strengths and assets, as well as opportunities for growth, in order to clarify some tangible goals that you'd like to see your community work toward in order to create and maintain a welcoming community where everyone, including immigrants, feels that they belong and have the opportunity to thrive. And we'll do that by helping you to create and execute a plan to identify the resources that are necessary to support your goals, and we'll provide support in building your capacity as local leaders, whether you hold that title officially or unofficially, to ensure that your communities can meet areas of the welcoming standard, which is Welcoming America's framework for welcoming. It lays out the types of policies, programs, and practices that you'd expect to be in place in order for a community to be truly welcoming. So I won't go into more detail about that now, but if you're selected for RWI throughout the program, we'll dig more deeply into the standard and how it can serve as an on-ramp and a roadmap to welcoming in your rural community or region. And if you want to learn more about it, there is a QR code on this slide. You can check that out as well. So how does this program help you to create and execute your strategic welcoming and inclusion goals? And that happens through various benefits, including things like complimentary Welcoming Network membership for 2026, travel and accommodation support to attend the in-person rural welcoming gathering that we'll be hosting in the spring, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, one-on-one technical assistance from Welcoming America staff, matching you with a rural local-to-local community partner, which we'll talk more about momentarily, a financial stipend for participants to host or to support the hosting of a Welcoming Week event in your community or your region, and we'll talk more about that momentarily as well. And then we also have optional rural office hours each month, which are an added opportunity for support and engagement with Welcoming America staff. So to dig a little bit more deeply into some of those benefits, as I mentioned, you'll receive complimentary Welcoming Network membership for 2026. And so that means that not only will you be able to participate in the Rural Welcoming Initiative, but you'll also have full access to all of the benefits of Welcoming Network membership, including additional member-only training and resources on a variety of subjects, including things like language access, bridge building, inclusive economic development, and more, communities of practice to engage with other welcoming and belonging practitioners on specific topics or within particular affinity groups, and many more benefits as well. The Rural Welcoming Gathering that I mentioned, Welcoming America will provide to each RWI participant community or organization a travel stipend and accommodation support to attend the Rural Welcoming Gathering, which will happen this spring. The gathering will be an in-person event, which will bring together RWI cohort participants and other rural welcoming practitioners for peer learning, community connection, and networking. This in-person event is not a requirement of the program this year, but we do highly encourage attendance. And so that's why we will try to eliminate as much of a financial barrier as there might be to attendance, so that as many folks are able to participate as possible. So again, RWI attendees of this gathering will receive a financial stipend to offset most travel and accommodation costs for one representative, although you are able to send up to 2 people per participant organization or community. And right now we tentatively expect that gathering will take place from April 27th through the 30th, but we will have the final details as to the date, the location, and the financial support available to you at the time that the selection decisions are made, so that you can make a fully informed decision about attending the gathering at the time that you formally commit to participation in the program, if your community or your organization are selected. I also mentioned Welcoming Week, which is Welcoming America's annual celebration that brings together neighbors of all backgrounds to connect, build partnerships, and uplift the importance of welcoming and inclusive communities. Welcoming Week takes place each year in September. It's celebrated locally by people in communities all across the US and in countries all over the world. And next year it will be from September 10th through the 19th. Here you can see some photos from Welcoming Week events that were hosted or supported by past RWI participants. And Welcoming America will provide a financial stipend to support the hosting of a Welcoming Week event in your community or your region. And we also have a ton of resources to help with event planning, community outreach, marketing, and more that we'll share as part of the RWI program to help you celebrate Welcoming Week locally in 2026. The Rural Local to Local Community Partnership, or L2L, is an RWI benefit where each RWI participant organization or locality will be matched with another rural member of the Welcoming Network who's been engaged in welcoming work for quite some time. And you'll get to meet with them virtually at least twice in 2026 to engage in thought partnership, connection, and to expand your personal network of rural welcomers. And so these photos are of some of the past L2L participants, some of whom had the chance to meet with their partners in person at an RWI gathering. And so we try to be really thoughtful and intentional about our matchmaking. So you'll see a question in the RWI application about your interest and the approach that you'd like to take to this partnership. Because sometimes folks want to be connected with another organization that's very similar to their own. So for instance, if you're maybe a public health organization, maybe you want to be connected with another rural public health organization and engage in thought partnership along those same lines. Other times folks are thinking about forging or deepening partnerships across sectors. And so maybe they want to be partnered with a different type of organization to connect around, how could we forge that kind of partnership in our own community or region. So there's any number of approaches that you can take, and we'll do our best to match you according to the interests that you indicate in your application. So those are some of the benefits of participating in RWI. And now we'll dive a little more into what we're asking of you as RWI participants. What are you committing to? And you'll see that most of the commitments align directly with the benefits. So you'll be asked to commit to having at least one person from your organization or locality attend virtual cohort calls, which will take place approximately every other month. And during those calls, we'll have an opportunity to network in small groups, as well as to hear from guest speakers that have subject matter expertise in areas like housing, coalition building, civic engagement, and more, through the lens of the unique challenges and opportunities that are present in the rural context. And you'll be given the dates of all of those meetings by the time that we have our program kickoff call in January, so that you can block your calendar accordingly throughout the year. RWI participants are required to participate in that L2L program that we talked about, that Rural Local to Local Community Partnership. And you do that by meeting virtually with your matched partner at least twice over the course of the year. You're also asked to commit to engage with Welcoming America staff that will be working with you, providing tailored technical assistance as you identify and implement your strategic welcoming goals. And you'll commit to supporting a Welcoming Week event in your community or region, again, with financial support offered in the form of a mini grant from Welcoming America. So as you can see, there are commitments, but they're really intended to be for your benefit. The purpose of this program is to support you and your community in your welcoming efforts. So the last couple of things, you will be asked to complete a couple of brief program evaluations or surveys around things like Welcoming Week and the RWI program overall, so that we can take in your feedback and consider it as we continue to develop and refine RWI in the future. This year, 2026, will be our 7th year of this program. And so we've learned a lot, and we think that we have a pretty great program, but we're always open to learning more from the folks who participate, and we really value your input. And the last thing that's listed here is not a requirement, but we do strongly encourage all RWI participants to just make your best efforts to be able to send at least one representative to the Rural Welcoming Gathering. Again, attendance isn't a requirement, but we think that you'll get the most out of this program by being able to attend the in-person event. And so we will do our best to provide as robust travel and accommodation support as we can to help make attending accessible to as many RWI participants as possible. And so with that, this QR code will take you to the RWI program overview, which also contains a link to the application. Applications are due by November 21st, 2025, and then selection decisions will be announced by the week of December 8th, so that you'll know before we all head off for end of year holidays whether you'll be joining RWI in January when the 2026 cohort kicks off. So the application itself is fairly straightforward. Really what we're looking for is just to understand, why do you want to be part of RWI? What are some of the needs or the goals that you're looking to accomplish in your community when it comes to welcoming, belonging, and immigrant inclusion? So our intent is not for it to be daunting. It shouldn't take too long to complete. But with that, we'll move to the Q&A portion. And so I'll stop sharing my slides here so that we can see each other. If you have any questions, do feel free if you'd like to raise your hand, or you can just come off mute and ask your question that way. And I'll look through the questions in the chat as well in case any folks added here. Okay, so did we discuss what criteria or qualities make an ideal rural community or organization? And Jennifer, I see you have your hand raised as well. Did you want to add anything else to that question?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You were sort of, were referencing it when I was able to join. And, I guess, since you're only going to be adding 10, I was just interested in like, where in the journey, are you sort of looking for, because obviously you have to have some skin in the game, but.
That's a great question. Yeah, thank you for asking that. So what I'll say is that in the past, we have had folks who are really any and everywhere along that journey, the spectrum of welcoming work and the level of intentionality or the substantive effort that communities or organizations have been able to make in this welcoming work. So there isn't a preference for folks who are earlier or further along in the process. It's really more about, do you have an idea about what is going to be beneficial to you in participating in this program? So if you're very new to welcoming work and thinking about belonging and immigrant inclusion, what is your interest? Are you looking to attract and retain new residents in your community? Have you experienced demographic change and you're wanting to create a more welcoming environment? And how do you articulate that? If you're further along in your welcoming journey, are there new partnerships that you're looking to forge? Have you already started doing strategic welcoming planning and you're looking for support in implementing those plans? So it's really more about, are you able to articulate your interest as opposed to where you are in the journey? So hopefully that's helpful. If I can provide more clarity, please let me know. Okay, thank you. Esteban?
Yeah, sure. No, thanks, Brianna. And I think my question, I think you kind of, and the situation, and especially with the immigrant community and their, lack of participation to engage. Is that part of it? Because I know that's one of the big things, especially here, since I'm in the Columbia Gorge area. I don't know if you've been here, and it's 2 counties in Washington and 2 counties in Oregon that have started to focus more regional.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts, especially when it comes to the immigrant community and sometimes their lack of participation in events?
Yeah, so that's something that oftentimes comes up, and it's a big part of what Welcoming America's network thinks about as a whole, not just RWI. So if that's something that is of interest or concern in your region, we try to think about different ways to do some bridge building. How do you start to build that trust? And it can be, it's long-term work, right? We're not gonna we're not gonna make it all happen over the course of this program, but we will try to really drill down on, okay, who do we feel like are some of the trusted connectors in community? How can we support them in doing some of that outreach in order to get folks to engage? What are the different ways that we can start to build trust in community? So yeah, it certainly is the case oftentimes that we're thinking about how can we increase engagement between different populations in community as well, right? Sometimes there are long-term community members who maybe are happy for having immigrant residents in their community, but they don't really think as deeply about those relationships as they do about like, oh, it's fine. I feel okay. I'm tolerant, but maybe not truly welcoming, not really thinking about inclusion. And so how do we build those bridges between both groups so that there's engagement on all sides? Other questions that folks might have? Let's see. I see Lori, you put a question. Let me just read quickly. Yes, that's a great question. So Lori's question is around having a population size that's larger than that 50,000 number that I mentioned. That's okay. We are happy for folks to apply from different types of communities. Again, it's really more about, does it feel like either your community or the region that your organization is serving rural in character, and then articulating that in your application. Because yeah, there's no, kind of one simple definition of what a rural place is, and also the interests and needs of everybody that's on this call, everybody that's participated in past RWI cohorts, they're different. And so we really want to just be thinking about, is this the best program to be able to support you? So we would love to see an application from your community or your region. And then, if it does feel like, oh gosh, maybe this program isn't the right support for that, we are also going to really be thinking about, are there other ways that Welcoming America can be supporting any of the applications that you all are submitting, because we're excited that you are interested, that you're wanting to do this work, and we want to find ways to support that. So I'm happy for the application. And then if for any reason it isn't selected, we are still going to be thinking about what are the other ways that we can be supportive for you all. Other questions that folks might have? We do sometimes get asked about costs. And so we did touch on it, but I'll just reiterate, there's absolutely no cost to participating in this program. The only costs that could potentially be incurred are related to that rural welcoming gathering, which is not required. And again, we are going to do our best to provide as much travel support. So whether you're flying or driving into the location, accommodation support for the stay, providing some of those meals. We're going to do our best to cover those costs as robustly as we can, and we'll be able to be more clear about what that financial support is going to look like at the time that we make our selection decisions, so that before you formally commit, if we send you an email and say, congratulations, we would love to have you, you can look over those details and determine, does this make sense for me or not? And even if you're not able to commit to attending the rural welcoming gathering this year, we are still accepting folks into the program who aren't able to attend. We would just love for everybody to be able to send someone, because we feel like it really does help to build those relationships, to get some opportunity to connect in person, to get to go out and do some community tours, because we'll be going to a rural community for the gathering. So we would love for you to be able to do that, but we don't want folks to incur costs that are not feasible for them. And so we're happy to work with you on that. I will also mention one other thing. Sometimes we do get a question. No one has raised it here, but just in case you were wondering, we do sometimes get applications from partners. Sometimes maybe there's a couple of nonprofit organizations, or maybe, excuse me, a local government and another community stakeholder organization that would like to participate in the program together. And that's absolutely fine. We love that, in fact. So you are welcome to apply, and you can apply jointly. You don't need to each submit a separate application. We're happy to have you apply together, and we would be happy to support you through the program in that way. Any other questions that folks have? I don't want to keep you, but I also want to make sure we leave space in case there's other things. Okay, well, seeing none, I think we'll end here. I'll just, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Hi, good morning. My question, so thank you so much for all this information. First of all, this is my first time listening to your program. And so my question is around, so what we would be applying for would be to participate in the program, for us to be selected to participate and be able to access the different benefits. There's no specific guidelines for us, for example, applying for a specific grant dollar amount or anything like that, correct? I just want to make sure I'm understanding the process correctly and how that works.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yes, in this case, there isn't, in your proposal or application that you submit, there isn't a specific grant dollar amount that you'd be applying for. It is to receive access to the program itself, the technical assistance, one-on-one and group peer learning opportunities, attending the in-person gathering. Those are the types of supports. And then there will be a financial stipend that's provided uniformly to all participants for the Welcoming Week event. But no, yeah, you don't need to identify a specific grant amount for this application.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Of course, you're welcome. Okay, well, if other questions do come up, I really hope folks will reach out to me. If you look on the application, you'll see my email address is shared there, so you can reach out to me. Again, it's just Brianna@welcomingamerica.org. We will send out a follow-up email with the copy of these slides and this recording as well to everybody who's on this call and who registered for today. So I thank you again for being here and for your interest. I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing applications from all of you. Thanks again. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care, everybody.